All right, guys. So I'm gonna just wait just a few seconds, or maybe a minute or two, to just kind of let everybody catch up for a little bit. And in the meanwhile, I'm at a hotel on hotel Wi-Fi, and I'm using a different mic today because it was easier to pack for my trip. So give me a little bit of feedback for those of you who are watching, if you don't mind. Let me know if there's any audio or video delay, and let me know if the volume of my mic is good. And I'll make some adjustments as we wait for some people to get in. But anyways, I hope all of you guys are good to go, and you've had a good week so far, and that hopefully you came with some questions or concerns or comments about some of the stuff that we talked about last week in the previous episode. So we'll see. We'll see how everything goes. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun one today and this coming Wednesday. So I'm going to kind of like combine two different. I'm going to combine the formal episode that was just supposed to be today into today and Wednesday. It's going to be like extra long. Okay, cool. Thanks, Todd. I appreciate the feedback. Okay. Let's see what we got here. Sorry if you're hearing my mic noise in the background. It's probably kind of annoying. My bad. All right, I'm sorry, not my mic, my little mouse. I can talk. Okay, cool. So far, it looks like you guys are saying that everything looks and sounds good. So cool. Okay. So as I wait a little bit longer for some people to come, I'm just gonna start to go over a little bit about what today's episode is going to be. I have gotten some like insanely detailed and valuable information from you guys through email, through the question submission form on the website, through text messages, phone calls. First off, I apologize. I have not been able to get back to all of you because it has literally been a huge amount of you. So, and every one of you are sending like your notes for your practice. You're sending your plans. Some of you, like Ron, you've sent a bunch of videos. It's a lot of stuff to go through, and I'm taking my time to get through it because I actually want to be able to use it in a valuable way for the episode. What I decided to do was that I like, if I try to incorporate all of that into this one episode, it's going to be pure chaos. Because of the length of information, the detail of information, and the fact that I've now realized that still there are a lot of you that have not been able to get to your practice yet. It's only been a week since we had the last video. Actually, it's not even been a week. It's been 5 days since our last video on here going over the recorded episode that was released a week ago. So obviously I recognize that it's hard to get a practice scheduled, like planned, scheduled, and then get to go out to the range, be able to shoot in less than a week. So I'm going to kind of extend this a little bit because it's pretty valuable. So today is going to be answering some questions, giving you a little bit of feedback and direction in terms of what to do if some of you feel lost with how to take the information from the previous released episode on Monday, which was optimizing your practice, the mental side of practice. Kind of just refining that a little bit for you, answering some questions, giving you guidance, letting you go forward and try to execute on some of that stuff. I'm seeing some stuff in the chat, so let me read through and look at this. Todd, yes, they did get a hold of me. I've been teaching down in Florida the last couple days on top of trying to do some filming for some helpful instructional videos on stuff. So and then having video calls in this. So I haven't gotten a chance to respond yet, but I'll get to them either tonight or tomorrow. Todd says, another Todd. He says, out of curiosity, do you think brand matters at all when it comes to gun, given each brand fits you well, or you are getting a custom stock? That's a great question. I think there are so many ways I can answer that question. Refine just a little bit what you mean by does brand matter? Like what are important variables for you in purchasing a gun? Because the way I would answer that question, dependent on the answer to my question for you, is going to be different. So tell me what's important to you, and if it's, and I'm not just talking about specific, characteristics of the gun itself, but if something is important, like if you really care about service or whatever it is, availability of dealers close to you, stuff like that, let me know, and I'll give you a better answer. Let's see. Okay, as you're typing that up, Todd, I am going to pull up some notes. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so, yeah, amen to that. Pratzi, always the way to go. Okay, so as I'm waiting for Todd to answer some of that, I'm just going to go over real quickly, summarize the topics from the last week's episode. And I do want to say this. I don't know how many of you that are listening right now that this will apply to, but I do need to say this. The episode that I released last week, that was called, man, I don't even remember exactly what it was called. Let's see. I titled it "Understanding the Mental Component to Optimizing Practice." That episode was, I released the recorded version of it, and then I put out a little trailer, or I should say a teaser, like 11-minute long teaser episode as a YouTube video. And it was just a snippet, an 11-minute snippet from that episode. And I would say 80% of the people that I've talked to, actually probably 90% of the people that I've talked to, think that 11-minute episode is the real episode. So if you think that the last week's episode was 11 minutes long, first off, shame on you. You should know me better. I can't say anything in just 11 minutes. But so really not shame on you. I'm making fun of myself for those of you that don't get my humor. But the real episode is almost 3 hours long. And you can find that on YouTube as well with the timestamps in the video. You can also find that on Apple Podcasts, on the app of Apple Podcasts, and on Spotify if you look for the Journey Podcast. The easiest way to find it, because it's kind of a new podcast and there are other podcasts called the Journey Podcast, the easiest way to find it is to go to my website, which is dradulovich.com/podcast, or if you just Google search my name, my website comes up, and then on the top of the page, if you're on a computer, or on the little like 3-dot thing on the top right, click that, and then click the title of the page that says the Journey Podcast, and that'll bring you to the podcast portal of my website, and you can listen to the episode direct on there with the timestamps as well, or you can click a link that'll take you to Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I'm working on building more stuff for you to be able to listen to it. But for right now, those are the 3 places. So my website, 4 places. My website, YouTube, Spotify, or the Apple Podcast app. But it's a almost 3 hour long episode. Again, I'm going to preface that with I have the timestamps of every category very succinctly organized in terms of what time of the podcast that category starts. So you don't have to just listen for 3 hours to find something that's interesting to you. You can look through the periods of when each topic is, and you can go to that. So if that's what you think, go there. Look at these questions real quick. Trevor says, if you want to do some short video stuff while I'm in Florida, I'll be there most of the month and we'll have my camera equipment. Oh, cool. Awesome. Yeah, I'm going back home in a couple of days, and then I come back again, I want to say in like 9 days or something. And I do plan on doing a lot of filming. But that'll be cool. I'm down for that. Okay. Todd says, on the guns, I just like trying different brands. Right now I shoot a Krieghoff, but I've always wanted to try a Perazzi. I just don't know if it's worth the money trying something else. Okay, so yeah, I mean, again, it really depends on what you feel like is worth the money. Your value proposition to yourself is different than what I would tell you, but I can personally tell you that, the difference between a Krieghoff and, if you already have a Krieghoff, and I don't mean to insult other brands, by not mentioning them. I would never actually insult another brand, but just by not mentioning them. If you already have a Krieghoff, in my opinion, the only thing that would be worth going to would be a Perazzi. And you could put Kolar in that category, but they're a great gun and great people. And it's considered about the same level of gun, but I would really just think about switching over to a Perazzi. And the difference between a Krieghoff and a Perazzi, there's plenty of differences, but the biggest thing to consider is that with a Perazzi, you can custom build the whole gun. And I talked about it in my other episode. I think actually someone asked this question last Wednesday. So if you find the video for that, then I go through my answer. But basically, for the sake of saving time in this episode, my answer to you would be, is it worth it? Yes. To switch over to that type of gun, because you can completely build a bespoke gun for the price of a gun off the shelf. On top of that, you can get into the mechanics and everything of the gun, the tech specs of the gun. But again, to save time, I'm actually working on a video to talk about that right now. And I would say like in a couple weeks, that's going to be out. And it's going to be an insanely detailed, really, really in-depth video about that. So I would say best answer for you would be wait till that video comes out, because it'll be really, really good. What else we got? Okay. Yeah, as far as Perazzi goes, Todd, let me know where you live. But here's the thing: if you're thinking about switching to a Perazzi, the thing that you have to understand is that because of the fact that it's a totally bespoke built gun, like totally custom made for you. And every time I say that, people think I'm just talking about the stock dimensions. I'm not just talking about the stock dimensions. That's a third of what you can customize on that gun. And I also don't mean customization as in, you can pick the engraving pattern. No, I mean, you can literally, it would be like going to the Ferrari factory and giving them a blueprint for a gun or a blueprint for a car, and saying like, here's exactly how I want you to build, the weight distribution, basically giving them a blueprint for everything except for the actual shape of the car. That's how much you can spec out a Perazzi. It's unbelievable. And there are very few people that know how to do that. If you do get to the point where you're thinking about buying one, or you just want to have a conversation with me about it so I can explain it in depth, then get in contact with me, send me an email, and I'll just schedule a call with you and I can go over it and answer your questions more directly. Okay. So anyways, let me go through real quick what the Boy, this is really weird. There's like strange feedback in the episode. Anyways, if my video starts to lag or something, just let me know. Okay, so real quick, I'm going to go through the summary of last week's episode, the 3-hour long one. And then if we have any questions on that, let's go over it. And then I will get into somewhat introducing some of the information. Okay, so in that episode, we started off with the topic of open loop versus closed loop skills, and talked basically that an open loop skill is something that has external feedback. There's an external, because we can be talking about anything. There's no specific word I can use, but basically in shooting, because of the fact that after you finish making all of the movement that you just made in terms of your mechanics, that after that happens, the target either breaks or does not. That external feedback is what creates and forces the skill of shooting, or the sport of shooting, into being defined as an open loop skill. So a closed loop skill would be anything like walking or running or playing a guitar or something like that. But anything with external feedback that happens after you execute the physical mechanics, that's an open loop skill. Difference between that, like if you could say, okay, well, a guitar has feedback because you can hear if it's good or bad. Yes, but in the process of doing the movement and mechanics of playing a guitar, you have a continuous feedback loop of information of whether or not what you're doing is good or bad. In shooting, it's not continuous. It doesn't continuously feed back information that what you're doing is correct. You have to execute what you tried to do. After you finish executing, you get the result. That's open loop. The reason why that needs to be differentiated and highlighted and talked about and understood is because if we don't recognize that, then we can very easily misplace what we value in terms of how we're grading what we're trying to learn. And so basically, if we care too much about breaking the target, then we can misidentify good movement because the target broke, when in reality we broke the target doing bad movement. And then over time, if we repeat that over and over and over again because we care about the bird, then we don't actually learn anything. We're not redeveloping new, better skill in terms of our movement. That's really, really important to understand. And what it means is that you need to place your value in what you're doing, not the result of what you're doing. It's the typical process before product thing. Then we got into the 3 components that are involved in learning a physical skill. And let me read into this. That the first category that I brought up was like sensory perception. Then the next category that I brought up was like actual physical movement. And then the last one was my favorite word, proprioception. And we define that as basically sensory perception is where you're assigning your conscious attention to. So like, what are you paying attention to? That's going to be very, very important to determine as you're trying to learn. That physical movement thing is basically is the second category of what's so important about being able to pay attention to that, is that we have to define and predetermine what the movement is that we're trying to learn and execute, and understand like in an in-depth way what is supposed to happen, attach our sensory perception to it as we're doing it so that we're aware consciously of how it's happening. And then that last one, proprioception, is basically your body. You could say that it's like how you feel and sense yourself moving without consciously determining how you're moving. So it would be, It's your body's movement without consciously seeing and deciding how it moves. We gave that example of the proprioception with, like, if you're sitting on a chair and your legs fall asleep and you try to walk, that it completely ends your proprioceptive feedback with your legs if you try to walk, and so it forces you to have to move your legs very consciously and non-proprioceptively. And when we do that, we recognize how bad we are at walking consciously. And that example, without me going into depth of it, because I went into depth in the last episode, that example is a perfect analogy to what happens if we consciously try to execute the mechanics in the shot. It doesn't work. It works, but not as fluently, efficiently, and effectively as it does if we allow that proprioceptive feedback to give us an understanding non-consciously, but through that physical awareness of where our gun is, how our body's moving, what it feels like, the speed of everything being in time, and all that stuff. Okay, let's see. I'm just checking up on comments. You guys are still talking about guns. Okay. So then we talked into like the different neurology of physical movement, and we talked about those CPGs, the central pattern generators, the lower motor neurons, and the upper motor neurons. Basically, defining and understanding what the differences between all those three things are, which ones are engaged when we're doing it consciously and learning, and which ones are engaged when we're doing it proprioceptively and non-consciously. And the reason why that's important is because we need to make sure that we're using the correct mind blank. We need to make sure that we're consciously assigning our sensory perception to the correct thing, so that we're engaging the right neurological pathway, so that when we have positive feedback based off of our process that spikes dopamine, that the brain catalogs that neurological synapse as good. Let's remember this, and it doesn't delete it, basically. Then we talked a little bit about the importance of repetition in shooting. So it was like, we talked about how repetition with the wrong conscious focus or assigned sensory perception can basically do more harm than good. We talked about how reps, like high reps are good, but what's more important is high reps over a specific amount of time, and then what that does to the speed in which you learn a new physical skill. And then on top of that, we talked about the importance of literally failing while you're learning, and how it's not just beneficial, but literally required to increase the neuroplasticity of the way that your brain is working and accepting failure and being aware of what happens when things go bad versus good. And then basically accepting that change to allow for rewriting of the way that those CPG, that central pattern generator process, controls your muscles as you're shooting if you do it non-consciously. So very, very important to do that and to expect that. I just went into dopamine after that, and then I set up an ideal situation for learning. So the reason why I just went through that really fast, and I'm like really fast, I turned a 3-hour podcast into probably 3 minutes, is just because I want to make sure that that's a very like heady, deep, complex podcast to talk about. And I want to make sure that you guys understand everything that we went through, don't have any questions on it, and then I want to take some of your questions on basically, is there something from that episode that you tried to incorporate into creating your practice routine you didn't quite understand if you were doing it correctly or incorrectly that you want me to help you with? So why don't we just open the floor for questions a little bit to basically ask me anything based off of that, if you don't quite understand how to set a practice up for, like what exactly am I supposed to consciously pay attention to? How do I do that? Whatever it is. Any questions you have based off of that type of stuff, ask me so that I can help you so you can implement it into your plan. Okay. Just paying attention to the comments. Looks like you guys are it's turned into a gun salesman thing here. That's pretty cool. Okay, let's see. So, Justin, Ron, so you're saying you talked about slow motion practice being bad. Yes. Do you want me to go over that more in terms of why? Or are you just wanting to bring that up? Let me know what you're thinking, Ron. And then Justin says, David, will your app be available soon? Also, what do you consider its own mechanic? Okay, so yes, I just got an email back from the person, like my little agent guy or whatever, that's helping me communicate back and forth in between the app stores. And he said we're making progress. Nothing's getting declined. And the only thing I have to do is that basically, long story short, my account with Apple is for some reason, I don't know why, connected to a personal account, and it needs to be business. And that's the only roadblock right now. As soon as I switch that over, basically connected to one of my corporate businesses, then they'll be able to proceed forward. And it's basically already approved. So actually, we're really, really close. So that's exciting. And then what do I consider its own mechanic? I'm going to guess what you mean by that. And if I'm wrong in my answer, let me know. I'm going to guess that you mean that, like, if you broke down all of the things that you can try to learn, what would all of those things be? Which is a great question. So I hope that is your question, because if it's not, basically, in terms of the mechanics, what is a mechanic? I basically call them variables. So I talk about the mechanics. That's like a holistic, overarching term, but underneath that, I call variables. So variables would be, in terms of things that we can actually learn in terms of movement and increasing your proficiency and how skilled and efficient you are in making that movement. That would be like creating we'll just simplify it. Posture. It would be your draw length and hand speed. It would be not only that, but also the speed of the hands together in the mount. It would be your rotation and rotation speed. It would be your basically maintaining balance. You could put that underneath rotation. But basically it's like rotating without losing balance and maintaining the distribution of your weight. Moving your hands at the speed of the bird in the same proportionate distance and space as the bird. Changing your posture on a bird that requires that, or setting and maintaining your posture on a bird that requires that. The total physical geometry of what's involved in making your mount, like bringing the gun from an unmounted position to a mounted position. And that's basically, that covers all the movement. I don't define mechanics as pull away, swing through, sustain lead, collapsing lead. I actually never even talk about those in my teaching, because that is, in order to, if I were to take you to a bird and say, okay, I want you to shoot this pull away, well, I'm forcing you to look at the barrel, or I'm forcing you to look at the gap. I'm not going to say that I'm forcing you to do that for the whole shot, but there will be a point in time at which you have to be aware of those things to initiate, engage, and execute that mechanic, so to speak. And I don't want to do that, because if we focus on the mechanics of the body instead of the mechanics of the sight picture, then if we get the physical movement down correctly, that allows the sight picture, so to speak, to be correct without having to think about it. And that's what I like to try to learn. I mean, it's literally like, if you think about this, relate it to anything, what do you think is easier, learning to tie your shoes or learning to memorize a sight picture and an application of lead method style on an infinite number of targets. I would definitely say that learning to tie your shoe is easier than the memorization of all those different things, because learning to tie your shoe is a physical movement. And after you do it enough times, you can execute the physical movement of tying your shoe non-consciously. You don't have to consciously think step by step, what happens next. It just happens. And that is literally no different than learning to move and shoot. The problem is that we filter shooting through the wrong thing, and we value the wrong thing. So because we place value in the wrong thing, which is the memorization of all that stuff, we overcomplicate the game drastically. So basically from now on, if you want to subscribe to that idea, then think of mechanics of shooting more or less everything inside of your body, and you never have to think about anything outside. On top of that, that'd be like physical mechanics. I also would consider specific visual mechanics part of the mechanics. So the variables of your eyes, like the style and type of movement, how you're titrating your focus, how you're moving from one bird to the next bird, and things like that. That's all the stuff that we can practice. Okay, so Ron says, is practicing my mount in slow motion not a good idea because it's neurologically bad? So basically what the science and research says about that is that there's a point in time where it can be at least neutral and maybe somewhat beneficial, but especially in the beginning stage of trying to learn a physical movement that's new. So like if you're trying to perfect your mechanics in shooting, then the practicing in slow motion is not beneficial. And the reason why it's not beneficial is because and we go into it more in depth in that podcast episode released on Monday, but I'll just like rehash it. Basically is that slow motion movement is too precise. And because it's so precise, it doesn't create mistakes. It allows for no error. And if you look into the neurology of increasing your neuroplasticity to allow for your brain to accept, for you to consciously accept change and notice it and be aware and kind of like in a way reprogram the way that you move when you have a gun, then missing and errors is required because it cues your conscious attention to the mistake that you've made to harness your awareness so you're focused on it and keeps you in that feedback loop of the same thing. Well, if we practice in slow motion, and let's pretend that we somehow could practice in slow motion with a bird that moves in slow motion, which is impossible, but let's just pretend that we can. And the problem is that it happens so slow that it's so hard to make a mistake that we don't get that I think you would call it a delta. There's no big change in your dopamine spikes from shot to shot to shot because it's so easy to continuously repeat a perfect move. So there's no feedback loop of error to cue your conscious attention to increase neuroplasticity. And the other problem that I guess I should say the other thing that it detracts from is that you have no proprioceptive feedback because of the fact that it forces you to be extra conscious in your movement. You're not engaging that third core element of learning a new physical skill, which is that proprioceptive movement. And it just makes you hyper consciously aware and in control of your movement. So you're not engaging, you're basically engaging that sensory perception and the physical movement, but that last category of proprioception is not being engaged. So you're not hitting all three categories to be able to increase the speed at which you learn what you're doing. Basically, that's not good in the beginning of trying to learn a new move. Until a very high proficiency level, you basically don't want to do it. Essentially, when you're at like if you could consider yourself to basically in an NSCA tournaments, let's say like at a regional, if you can basically consistently get in the top 15 to 20 people at a major NSCA event, then at that point, slow motion can be utilized in a positive and beneficial way for different reasons. Basically, for the same purpose that it's bad for someone trying to learn or underneath that level of skill, that is why it becomes good for somebody that's at that level of skill. Because for someone like me, I already kind of have the developed proprioceptive feedback and control and those central pattern generators in terms of how that communicate with the muscles in my body to allow movement. That's all already done very, very, very non-consciously, and I don't have to reprogram my movement to be non-conscious and be controlled with CPGs. So sometimes it can be good for me to force it into the conscious level so that I can actually attach my sensory perception to that specific thing, be aware of it, and critique that. And that's why, you'll see actually, I don't know if he knows and understands the neurological science behind it, but one huge proponent of slow motion practice that I have seen just on social media is actually Vincent Hancock. I don't know. I would say pretty much unarguably one of the greatest ever at his game in the Olympics. And he does slow motion a lot. In fact, he puts videos up on his social media. That's very beneficial for him. It would not be beneficial for somebody trying to learn to shoot international skeet. Okay, so Ron says, so it would be better to dry fire on live targets at the normal speed. Yes, absolutely. If you dry fire on birds at the normal speed, that basically recategorizes shooting from an open loop skill to a closed loop skill, where you now all of a sudden can gain continuous feedback in terms of your sensory perception and your awareness. Because you're not on autopilot with a value placed in breaking the target. So all of your attention is on the target, not thinking about how your body is moving, because we've removed the shell from the gun and there is no possible result to the bird. So psychologically and emotionally, we're not attached to that target anymore. And now we can actually, almost in a way, trick ourselves psychologically into redefining the value of what we're doing into the physical movement of what we're doing, which allows us to be much more hypersensitive and aware to how our body feels when we're doing that, because that's the only thing that's happening. And so that is a great, great way to practice. Absolutely. And it's very, very cheap. So Trevor says, wouldn't a slow increase in speed of a mount lead to better, faster mount? When teaching baseball swings and calling, I typically start guys off slowly and build into a usable swing. Yeah, so Trevor, basically where slow motion can be beneficial is I would say when I went into reading the neurological studies of this, I found what I'm about to say. Let me end that sentence and start a new one so I can make sure I communicate this correctly. What I'm about to say is something that I did not find in any of the scientific literature that I researched, and I researched all of it. But through my understanding of what I read and applying it to different stages of learning and understanding the way that people conceptually understand and learn things, I would say that possibly very, 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 very early on, like brand new, whether it be calling or a baseball or golf swing or shooting, I can see the value in breaking what you're doing down into slow motion, not for the purpose of learning the physical skill, which was the scientific research that I read, but instead for the purpose of conceptually understanding what it needs to be done. So doing it in slow motion is not going to create, it's not going to transition the control of your body to become non-conscious, so that you can execute it without thinking about it. It won't do that, but I think what it will do in some form of beneficial approach would be that it would allow somebody who may feel overwhelmed in the complexity of the thing that they're trying to do to do it slow enough to understand how it all comes together conceptually. That way, then they can pull it into trying to reprogram those CPGs and upper and lower motor neurons. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, I didn't find research in that, but to me that would make a lot of sense. So Todd says, ever heard of the Terry Jordan wall chart? It's a trap shooting tool used when you can't get to the club to shoot targets. I've always wondered if something similar would help for shooting. I haven't. Also, sorry, I'm reading very slow. I'm on my laptop and my computer is situated kind of far away, and the words are really small. So, can I zoom in on this? Oh yeah, there we go. Man, I'm getting old. Okay, so let me read that again. Ever heard of the Terry Jordan wall chart? It's a trap shooting tool used when you can't get to the club to shoot targets. I've always wondered if something similar would help for sporting. I don't know what that is. I can obviously understand what that would be. I mean, I can tell you some of the drills that I have my students do, or some of the drills that I do myself, involve using a laser in your gun, picking points on the wall, and walking far back, and learning to control your point of impact as opposed to just your hands in the physical movement of the mount by trying to learn physical movement of and the complexity of a mount, a sporting mount versus a feed task mount, and learning different shots and movements and how rotation happens. I even literally do that kind of stuff on a Bosu ball to increase the importance of balance. But the one thing that I would say that's very, very important is that when I do that, and when I teach my students to do that, and I hand them that drill, I make sure that they use a laser in their gun, and I make sure that the whole time they're looking at the laser and not the gun, because especially if you're shooting low gun in sporting or feed task, I don't want you, looking at the gun during the mount. I'd rather you look at the target during the mount, and that would better be simulated with, a laser at the gun. So I mean, I kind of can see how that would be valuable. If I know what that is. Okay, so Justin says, David, would you recommend joining a local sporting clays league along with a regular practice routine? Great question. And yeah, I mean, absolutely. If you do that, then that kind of gives you a unique opportunity. And that opportunity would be that now you're kind of, for those of you who, I talked to Justin on the phone before I literally drove straight from a lesson and filming to this, and I had no time, but I was just able to make one phone call on my way here. And he asked me if, he said, I listened to your podcast and I understood that, you said that repetition in a specific amount of time is better than just repetition. So I have a question for you. Would it be better if I have 100 shells to shoot in a day, would it be better to shoot the 100 shells on one target, even if I feel like I get a handle on it in 25? Or would it be better to, once I feel like I have it, move on to the next thing? And I told him, I was like, absolutely shoot all the shells you can on one bird. And especially if it's 100 shells. And the reason for that is because, long story short, you're just giving more dopamine spikes to that specific firing of neurons, essentially. So that way you're increasing the potency of good to bad. I have to back up to explain that. If you're hitting birds with bad movement, you may be getting a dopamine spike in that, and your brain is going to record the process that it used to fire the upper and lower motor neurons and say like, okay, when we use this combination of signals, we got a dopamine spike. That's good. Let's save it. Well, maybe that combination of signals, i.e. the way that your brain told your muscles to move, was not good, but you still just accidentally hit the bird, or you're good enough to put the gun in the right place. So you just logged and saved a bad movement because you hit the bird. Well, if you're focused on doing the right mechanics and it takes you, let's say 25 shots to be able to feel like, oh, I got a handle on being able to move this way. I feel like I understand it conceptually. Let me move on. At that point, that's kind of like the first valuable point that you have, because now you went through the process of trial and error, making the mistakes, hopefully valuing the right thing. But now you have the opportunity for the next 75 shots, if you only got 100 left, to like create a heavier density of those dopamine spikes to be good movement, so that your overall ratio between what you're trying to learn and what you're trying to unlearn is more beneficial for you. And that's a very valuable thing to do. So with taking that into approach and saying, yeah, that'd be a good approach. If you join a sporting clays league, you can differentiate your two practices between sporting clays league gives me the variability, allows me to practice my application of my routine. So I'm cognitively working through my routine of competition to get more comfortable and familiar with that, with a bunch of different target diversity, and I'm practicing reading the birds and making a plan, and that's very, very valuable. Then your other practice that you do, not in the league, pick one thing that happened in the league that you felt like wasn't good and make that your practice. And so now you have this big and really good contrast between diversity and like a diversified targets, a big mesh of different things that you're trying to learn to conceptually understand and cognitively do, that is not involving physical movement, which is what we're talking about in this series. And then from that, run a shoot analysis sheet, figure out what you did, what your lowest hanging fruit is, create a practice plan, go do that for 100 shots. I would say that would be fantastic. Would you recommend joining? Okay, Banson Lego. So, can you link the research study on negative effects of slow motion or the name and author, please? Yeah. Let me see if I can find that real fast. Well, that's going to take me a little while. Let's do this. Banson Lego. I hope I'm saying your name right. Let me know if you follow me on any of my social media, because if you do, what I might just do is after I end this video, I'll find that, and then maybe I'll just post it on either Instagram or Facebook or something. But I have, it's not in my, because I'm on my laptop, I have my episode notes, which is just my talking points and not the actual research. But that actually brings up an interesting idea. Let me know. I mean, I might just be way too much of a nerd to actually care about this stuff. It's cool that you're asking that question. I love that. And I can send you any of the other stuff I looked at if you want to. It's really cool. But in the app that I develop, would you guys be interested at all in me putting some of those things up there? Because if you would, I can possibly include that kind of stuff for maybe like the 5 of you that would want to go and read those things. Okay, so Chris says, so does dry firing on a target make the practice session closed loop with instant feedback body mechanics? Is that what you just said to Ron? I missed a second there. Exactly. I mean, I'm not a neurologist, so I mean, I feel 100% confident in saying that yes, it does, because by definition, what that open loop is that we execute the physical mechanics and we have external feedback of whether or not they were good. That necessarily is not tied to the mechanics that we're trying to learn. And actually, that specific thing is not a required part of the definition to be open loop. Like, Let me think of another example that they used. I don't know why I'm having a brain fart right now. I wonder if I have it in my talking points. Let's see. Open loop, closed loop. No, I didn't take any. I don't have any notes on there for another example. I'm trying to think of an example of something that would be open loop, that that the external feedback is 100% directly 1-to-1 ratio of, if you do it correctly, you get the positive feedback, and if you do it incorrectly, you get the negative feedback. And just because I'm so hyper focused on shooting right now, I can't exit that thought process. If you guys can think of one, let me know. But basically, in shooting is kind of a little bit unique, because we can use really bad mechanic, like really bad movement, and still break the bird. Like if I have a left to right crosser, I can start the bird on my right and move to the left, and go the opposite direction with the bird, and I can break them. Is that a good mechanic to learn? No. But I can hit them that way. Over time, if I'm trying to be as good as possible, will learning that and developing that into my being controlled by those central pattern generators, will that be beneficial to me? Pretty much definitely not. So shooting is slightly unique in that way, but it doesn't have to be built that way. I just think with respect to that, it kind of makes shooting very, very hard to learn. Actually, a great example of this would be golf. If you don't have a good swing, the ball may end up in the right place, but you're not going to have a beautifully hit shot. I would say that's probably a good example of an open loop system where it's not as difficult as the process of shooting, in terms of giving you this little carrot that you can be deceptively tricked into thinking that you're doing the correct thing. So like, because of that external result being the thing that kind of defines shooting as open loop, if you remove that from the whole equation, then but keep the bird moving, like don't move without a target in the air, but you just take the shells out and pull the trigger still, then yes, I would say, in my expert opinion in shooting, and gorilla stupidity opinion in neurology, I would say that would make shooting a closed loop. It would make what you're doing there a closed loop system. But that would be beneficial to learning the physical movement. It would still not benefit you in competition, because now you add on the psychological aspect of wanting to actually being able to pull the trigger and hit or miss the bird. But it would help you, I think, more quickly master the physical movement that you're trying to learn. Let's see. Whoa. Yeah, Banson, I was thinking darts too, but I just don't know enough about darts to know if there's different styles of throwing a dart. I have no idea. Okay, so Ron says, turning open loop into closed loop to concentrate on perfecting the mount, then working the same target with live fire for practicing proprioception. Exactly right. Very good, Ron. Okay, Trevor says, so I'm a guy who's very process over result oriented. How do you manage that during a tournament? Oftentimes I'll find myself making a bad move and breaking the target, but knowing the repeatability of it isn't high. I then consciously make a change to correct the movement, but lack focus on the target and miss. Should I just roll with what worked, or still try to correct the bad move? That's a really good question, actually. And I actually did go over that in the episode somewhere. It might have been, I don't remember. I don't have the timestamps in front of me. But yeah, basically what I said was that unless you're going to a tournament for the purpose of either a self-assessment in, over a specific thing or practicing a routine or something, then really we go to a tournament for the sole purpose of scoring as good as we can. And if we understand what being conscious is, actually, this is in that 11-minute snippet. I talk about the importance of, when you're in a tournament, literally not caring about how you move. I don't mean that in terms of making a plan and getting in the right setup. But what I mean is, between the moments of time when you call, pull, and pull the trigger, do not think about how your body is moving. Do not assign any bit of your conscious sensory perception to feeling the way your body moves, because that will detract from your conscious attention to connecting your vision to the targets, and that will limit how well that you are able to engage that smooth pursuit movement of your eyes and make a good connection to the bird. So we don't care in the shot about how we move in a tournament, but 180 degree opposite placement of value in practice. We don't care. I don't care too much about attaching all of my attention to seeing the bird. I want to give myself the minimal amount of it so that I can make movements connected to it. But I want all the rest of my conscious awareness, attention, sensory perception, proprioceptive awareness. I want 100% of that, all based off of feeling the specific thing I'm trying to practice happen as it happens. And because, we don't care about looking good or doing the right move in a tournament. We should care about the right score. And every day, all day, purely proprioceptively connected, smooth pursuit, visual, ocular movement with the bird beats mechanics every day. So if you remove that connectedness visually with the bird, but add in the best possible mechanics you can ever have with the highest level mastery of those mechanics, somebody with the best possible visual connection with the worst possible mechanics that allow a connection is going to beat that other person every single time, because at the end of the day, a true non-conscious proprioceptive connection to the bird is better than any style of conscious connectedness to the bird anytime. So that's what I would do. Let's see. Holy cow, these chat things are going so fast, can't even keep up. Okay, cool. It looks like some of you guys are wanting some of those resources. That's cool. I will definitely do that. I don't know if I can add that into the app now that it's in that process. I might have to do that with an update. Maybe I'll put them on the website or something. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. I'm super excited that you guys want to do that, have interest in it, because it really is pretty amazing to read some of that stuff and go into the depth. Now, the hard thing sometimes is that, nobody puts funding into research for sporting clays or feed task or clay target shooting. I think, to my knowledge, there's only been one study based on it or in neurology or ophthalmology or any type of vision that included clay target shooting. I believe there's only been one. I may be mistaken on that, but I believe the only one to ever include that is Joan Vickers, and the study that was called Quiet Eye. Basically, if you just Google search Joan Vickers Quiet Eye, that study actually used, I believe, Olympic skeet shooters, among other things. I think they used golfers during putting on the green and some other stuff. But basically, because nobody ever has research funded to use shooting, because there's no money in shooting, a lot of times in these studies that you read, you kind of have to interpret through the lens of doing it in shooting to understand how it works. So I would say, let me just put this offer out there. If any of you are want to nerd out with me, and if any of you want to nerd out with me and get into some of that research, if you find research that you think is cool and applicable, send it to me, because number one, it may be something I haven't seen. And I would love to see it if I haven't seen it, but then also I may be able to help you interpret what they presented through the lens of shooting. Yeah, I agree, Trevor. Yeah, so there's some. It's hard to think of an example of something where you can have a bad. Trevor basically said baseball is the same way. You can't have a bad swing and still have a good hit. So it's similar to shooting in that sense, where or it's the opposite of shooting. So it's hard to differentiate the two. I can't yeah. Anyways, my brain's scattered. Let's refocus here. Okay. Todd says, at what part? I'm just gonna read through the next couple of things. So we got Todd, Brandon, Trevor. No problem, Trevor. Okay. Let's see. Todd says, at what part of your shooting career did you start looking into the neurological side? I think that was the most recent question I haven't answered. Okay, what part of your shooting career did you start looking into the neurological side? I always looked into weird things for a long time, but I would say I took a progression of probably, I've been shooting for over 2 decades, and I would say maybe about 15 years ago, I started to question sports psychology. Not question its validity, but what I mean is, instead of just accepting and emulating what I read in books, I started to say, okay, well, is there a way that I can make this more personal for me? At that point, no, I would say it was longer than 15 years ago. I don't know, 15 to 17 years ago, I started, I started off the normal progression of things, like, you read the Lanny Basham stuff, and then maybe like Bob Rotella, and then you get into a little bit more sports psychology. And that's about where most people end, if they even get into it at all. And I would say, I don't know, maybe like 5 years into shooting, so maybe about 17 or 18 years ago, I started to question those things in terms of, is this a structure that is perfect for me, that kind of stuff. And I would experiment, because my approach was just that, well, I'm young and I want to do this forever, might as well learn. And through the questioning of that, I arrived at some other things, like, okay, well, I remember reading a lot about the ethics of sports, a philosophical approach to sports, and understanding the difference between a sport, a game, and I forget what the other one was, but basically understanding how defining a set of rules and the external situation and all this kind of stuff, how that influences what we're doing, and what really is the difference between the sport and like practicing. And is there a difference? Is the difference really just externally placed value in rules, and things like that? So I started to take a philosophical approach, maybe about I don't know, 12 to 15 years. And I started to question that. And I, like, with my abstract way of thinking and creativity, I just went down a rabbit hole there. And then I would say maybe about, I don't know how long ago, maybe like around 2016, 2015, 2016, just because everybody started to get so good with the PSCA, we had to find things that would possibly help us be better. And the things that would get us 0.5% better was stuff that I had to do more work on compared to things that got me 10% better, 15 years prior. So I just started to get into science. I really love math and science. I started off with, nutritional science or, like physical health science, and then learning more about the eyes and stuff like that. And basically, I would say at the point when you start to teach as seriously and as frequently as I do, you start to notice patterns and things. And then if you think like I do, which is that you need to have an answer for every question that you ever get, either in your head or from a student or that you read somewhere, it's just like a natural progression that you start to go into something that is objectively defined. And then I just kind of went into the neurology. But I would say, like, I've enjoyed doing this podcast because it gives me the excuse to go even more in depth and do more research and present it and put it together in a way that I can present, and that helps me understand it better. So yeah, that is a good question. Does your practice plan involve any workouts or physical workouts? Great question. It should involve more than it does. At different parts of my life, it has involved a lot, or none at all. At times, I've been completely unaware and uncaring of my health. At that point, I literally got up to about 300 pounds. I'm not somebody that cares about that kind of stuff, and so I didn't even realize it. When I did realize it, I started to incorporate it, lost about 100 pounds through a lot of cardio, running. I don't like to try to get really bulked up because that influences the way that I feel like I can move. Not that I've ever been super bulked up, but I've always been a little bit weary of influencing gun fit a lot. And so I like to try to just be, do lots of cardio, and I'm weird. I like to like push myself mentally to like suffer and see how much I can exist in that moment. So I really do just like to run, and do stuff like that. Recently I haven't been as good as that as I should, just because of how busy I am teaching. And so, but it should be more heavily involved in that. And that's actually, when I release what my plan is to accomplish my goals, that's a heavy-handed part in it. So does it help for that to be the case? Both speaking from personal experience and just my understanding of all of that, 100%. I mean, I literally used to weigh, I think the heaviest I ever got was about 294 pounds. And at that point, I had pretty serious sleep apnea. Energy levels were terrible. I didn't really think or understand much about how I should eat. And I just did not have the energy to go through a round and just continuously execute and not get worn down over a multi-day event. What I felt to be the most clean, efficient, and by far best I've ever shot back to back to back all year long was once I started taking that seriously and losing weight through cardio fitness, and then just a healthier diet. And when I tell you the difference that it made, not just in not just in my health, but the energy that I had, which allowed me to focus way better. I could see better. I was more self-aware of how my body physically felt because of doing things like running and trying to consciously isolate different muscle groups and work things like that. It brought so much value. to my shooting that, I mean, I shot very well for the whole time that I've been focused on that. Fitness. Oh, that okay. So Trevor says the results from the eye study was amazing. The difference between a trained professional and the average now was wild. Yeah, I'm guessing, Trevor. I'm guessing, Trevor, that you're talking about a quiet eye thing. Yeah, if you guys don't know, look up that study if you can access it. I'm so ADHD. I like when I Google search studies I'm trying to look for. I don't really know where you can find that. I've read it multiple times. I don't know how you access it or whatever. But that is really cool. And very eye-opening, and really, if you care about shooting good, you should read that research. Trying to see if you guys want me to, I'll try to summarize the quiet eye study. It's been a little while since I read it, but I'll try to summarize it if you'd like me to. Skeet doesn't count. Oh, Nate. Banson, what database do you have access to? Oh, there you go. Man, I don't know. I honestly, a couple. A lot of times I utilize. I have some students that are neurologists or psychologists and stuff like that, and so a lot of times I'll ask them to get stuff for me. But gosh dang, man, you're hitting me with good questions, and I don't know, I don't remember. I also, I have a lot of professors in my family. I can, if you are unable to access something that you want to try to access, let me know and I can get it for you. Yeah, sorry, Trevor. I was having a complete brain fart when I was reading your question. I definitely messed that up. Did I say eye-opening? I really wasn't trying to be punny on that one. Whew. Okay. Dang, you guys are like hitting awesome questions. Do we have anything else? Did I miss one? Do you want me to go through anything else? I'll give you guys a few seconds. I'm about out of water here. I'm gonna get another one over there. I'll give you guys a few seconds to type up any questions that you may have, and I will be right back. Oh, cool. Lots of good questions. Okay, sorry that took a little longer than expected. I actually, while I was gone, my sister contacted me, and she's watching the podcast right now. So, hello, Brienne. I don't know if you can comment or not because you have to be logged into YouTube to be able to comment. But anyways, she's has a PhD in veterinary science, and she said that two good places to get some good research sources, if you're interested, are wiley.com and PubMed. So if you Google those, this is not a sponsor of the podcast, but for those of you that know what Element is, just getting some electrolytes on my water. Okay, so let me catch up on these questions. And thank you, Brienne, for doing that. So again, wiley.com and PubMed. But there's some other ones too. I know that there's some, I don't know if, for my sister, if you're listening, I don't know if those ones you have to pay for. I know that there's two of them that I'm subscribed to that I actually pay, or at least, I don't remember if I pay per excuse me, I don't know if I pay per study or pay subscription, but whatever it is. How was duck season? Best question of the night. I haven't gotten a chance. Oh, I did. I went hunting one time, but I've just been busy. I haven't been able to go, and it was a great hunt. And everybody that I talked to in the area has said that it's been really good. So hopefully it's good. How about you? Let me know. Let's see. Is there still money to be made for someone wanting to open a sporting clays course? Let me read through the rest of the questions, and then I'll come back to that one. To Trevor kind of give you an answer. I'll touch on it, though, again. Let's see. Brandon says, that was what I was thinking. Also, I've been looking into exercises that will help with finite movement, stabilizing muscle control, and being able to maintain a high level of focus was a big point. Okay. Real quickly, I will touch on this. I have not. I'm sure there is some to find, and I would love to look this up to see and read some of the research on it. And it might be counterproductive, I don't know. But from my personal experience, both with myself and the limited amount of students that I've done this with, one training drill that I have found that's freaking incredible and blows my mind every time I do it in terms of how much it pulls my conscious awareness to the specific thing I'm trying to learn is standing on a Bosu ball. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's one of those exercise balls. It's like a half ball with a flat top or bottom to it, depending on what way you position it. But standing on a Bosu ball while going through the physical movements of mounting the gun and simulating a shot on a target, I will definitely preface this with saying, so that I don't get sued, I do not recommend doing this outside at all. And I specifically do not recommend, and I urge you not to do this with a shell in your gun and actually shoot the birds. I will not say that I haven't done that. I have. But that's just very, very dangerous, depending on how much balance, how good of balance you have. What I would recommend you doing is going inside, using a Bosu ball and a laser pointer in your gun, and two sticky notes on the wall. And in a dismounted position, if you shoot low gun, start on one sticky note, and then work in your rotation and mount in your hands to connect to the second sticky note while standing on that Bosu ball. And a really easy way to do it is to like, if you have a piece of furniture like a chair or a couch, stand behind that, so that way if you do lose balance, you can grab onto it. But it blows my mind every single time how much that pulls me into feeling my balance, understanding and paying attention to all little micro adjustments that my body is making as I go through the motion of that. And then if I do that inside and then immediately go outside to go shoot, I am hyper aware of good movement with good balance and unchanging distribution of weight as I progress through the shot. It's very, very helpful. And that would be a great thing for you to do. If you're trying to find things, sorry, my nose itches. If you're trying to find things that that kind of correspond to what you just said, Brandon. Nate says, what software do I use on my website? Let me know what you mean. Are you talking about coding the website, building the website, or like for my forums or something? Let me know. Brienne got all the looks in the family, that's for sure. I just got a giant head. Yes, not most of the brains, all of the brains. Oh, cool, Nate. I hope you do well at your pheasant hunt. That sounds awesome. Is it like a tower pheasant, like a driven pheasant hunt, or are you hunting up birds in a field, upland hunting? Brett McCraney says, been dissecting a video of myself shooting a PSCA type speed round, analyzing my mechanics while being fully in the moment. Is this a good idea? I guess my answer to that question would be what for you're analyzing those things, but for what purpose, and also how much different it is what you're doing in terms of the scenario compared to when you're actually trying to shoot a tournament. Like in the video that you're watching of yourself, are you like loading really, really fast and going through a timed speed round really quickly? Or is there, let me know your purpose behind that. Okay. Scott says, can you touch on the optimal foot placement and stance? I've been trying a few different things and would like to hear your take. I'm a terrible person to ask a question like that because I just don't know. No, I'm kidding. I just don't have any experience or knowledge on that type of thing. But no, the reason I'm serious in saying I'm a bad person to ask that question to, because I don't like general rules, and I understand how the spectrum of placement of your feet in terms of width of stance and distribution of weight influences your movement and ability to move in specific ways. Supplementing, like low end torque and precise, slow, small movement for mobility and speed. And what the difference is between how you would need to stand if you have to make a movement that all happens within 2 inches of gun movement versus a movement that all happens, in 3 feet of gun movement. It's a big difference. And so it depends on the shot for me. But the other filter that I use to answer that question is it also depends on you. So it depends on how good your balance is. It depends on how strong your lower body is. It depends on the mechanical style of shooting that you use. Like the way that I like to shoot and the way that I teach to shoot really involves modifying your posture in a way that simulates like a martial arts bow. And in order to do that correctly in the right direction, it's actually much easier to have closer foot position than further foot position, because when you open your stance up, it's harder. Basically what you're doing is you're increasing the diameter of the circle around you that you can change your center mass. And so if we're changing posture with a wide foot position, it's very easy to accidentally reposition the distribution of our weight to be on the front foot if we're bowing over instead of equally distributed between the two. And that's bad through my style of shooting. Through other style of shooting, that's good. So I can answer that through my style of shooting. My answer would be that you want to have your feet as close together as possible to where you have a perfect blend of balance and control. You also want to have equally distributed weight on each foot, not just on left and right feet, but also equally between the front and the back of each foot. Your feet's got to be equal, man. And then as far as the gun angle to foot position angle, basically it's like a 45-degree angle. So a great way to look at it would be you position your body with a mirrored foot position. And let's say this is my heel and these are my toes. I'd be standing like maybe, oh, this is hard to get in the camera. Okay, let's say I'm standing like this. And a great way to position my body would be if I were to draw a line from my back heel to my front toe. That line from here to here and extended out should point at my break point. But again, that really heavily is influenced by things like, balance and flexibility and things like that. You can put it this way: the more precision required in a smaller amount of space of movement, the more open I will make my stance, because it's the equivalent of feeling like I have low end torque, which doesn't allow me to move fast, but I have great precision in small movement, and I have a very sensitive throttle, so to speak. It also allows me to have a good, my acceleration rate is easily controlled without inputting too much movement. So like if I have a more narrow stance and I have to quickly connect to the speed of a bird from zero movement to target speed with a very close together foot position, because I don't have that torque, then what I have to do is I almost have to over input energy. Like I have to over exert my rotational speed and let it bleed out to match the speed of the bird. And I don't like that. So it's just different on every shot and requires a lot of self-awareness. But if you understand those things, then you should be good. I realize that was probably a terrible answer. So let me know if you need a clarification or anything, or if you get it. Let's see. Upland planted birds. We go once about a month. Good bud is a member at a club. Usually puts out 10 birds and we bring home more. Awesome. Now that's, you get more than you pay for. I always like that kind of deal. That sounds cool, Nate. Trevor says, I'm hypersensitive of lower body feel. Do you hate uneven footing as much as me? If so, how do you go about navigating that on certain parkours that aren't flat? I totally relate to that. And Trevor, that's actually somewhat influenced by ADHD and having a little bit of like easily overstimulated awareness of your body, and sometimes being able to be forced into a very interoceptive state of mind. So you're right. I very much dislike that because it makes me feel like I have to reposition some things, and the movement and torque of where my power is coming from is different. The way that I combat that essentially is if it's very uneven footing, I actually bring my feet closer together to create a smaller center, like averaged center mass point, so that I can basically you're trading torque for stability, so that I feel more even in the way that my body is standing, because basically the anchor point that I have with the ground has been shrunk if I do that. And if I do that, now the unevenness of the ground is less noticeable. That's what I like to do. The reality of it is you kind of actually practice that on purpose if you want to go to like a world championship or something, because they're going to basically force you to stand on the side of a mountain with a weird foot position. You know, you don't want that to be an excuse for why you can't move right. Also, is the ballerina posture best for shooting the flying attack squirrel target? Exactly. You want the ballerina position on the flying squirrel, but then you also need a little bit of, not a lot, but just a little bit of lead reduction. Like the first level of advanced lead reduction, where not only are you pushing off with the hands, but also you're getting some body movement in there. And I would highly recommend those mechanics for that bird. Okay, Brett says, I have a few videos of myself shooting and I feel it has me in a very subconscious state where I try to be when I shoot regular sporting. I have a few videos of myself shooting and I feel it has me in a very subconscious state where I try to be when I shoot regular sporting. Okay, Brett, I'm going to reframe your question in my own words, and I want you to tell me if I am interpreting your question right. What you just said there was, in the videos that you have of yourself, the subconscious state that you were in while you were shooting in those videos is the ideal situation that you are trying to be able to get to when you shoot sporting clays. So because of that, you're trying to study those videos to see what you did so you can pull that into your sporting clays. Let me know if that's correct, and if it is, I'll answer that question. Not saying your question was worded bad. I just want to make sure I answer the right question. Cool. No problem, Scott. I'm glad I could answer that for you. So Damon says, so where your belly button is pointing is your break point with your foot position. Okay, so that's a common misconception. Let me I'm trying to think if there's a way I can stand where you guys can see what I'm doing. Let me see if I can get creative on this real quick. I have everything like very much, oh God, that was bad. Okay, we're gonna do this. Bear with me, guys. I don't want to knock anything down. Okay, let me move this weird hotel light. Okay, while I'm doing this, I'm gonna put it on the be right back thing, so that way I don't accidentally press a button, disconnect something, and screw up my video. Then I'll bring it back. I'm going to make it where hopefully I don't know if it's gonna work. We'll see. Let me look. I'll be right back. I'm going to try to make it to, you know what? Let me add the audio source so I can still answer your questions. Add audio input capture. Add source. Okay, cool. Okay, let's do this. That was annoyingly miscalculated. All right. Okay, go ahead and keep asking questions, guys. I can still see you, and hopefully you can still hear me. I'm going to try to make this where I can position the camera so you can see where my feet are. I think this actually might work. Okay. Cool. Let me move some of this. And go get my gun. Okay. I think I have it set up. Let me switch. Okay, so we're back here. Where in the world am I right now? I'm in Florida. Okay, so I have this set up. I put a belt on the ground, and that's going to be pointing this way towards where we're going to pretend that there's this theoretical breakpoint. And then I'm going to show you where the foot position needs to be so that you understand what I'm talking about. Hopefully. This is a very impromptu. I'm gonna get the focus of the camera correct. Okay, let's see if it got. Okay, yeah. So you can see my belt. Okay, so if this pointing this way is where the target is going to be shot, I would want to stand like this. This is my right foot. I know it looks like the left in this camera. Let me do this because that's going to be annoying and confusing for you guys. I'm going to change. I'm going to flip this horizontally. There we go. Okay, so now you can see it the way that it really is. Right leg, left leg. I'm a right-handed shooter. And I'm going to be shooting a bird pointing out here. And so I would have my right or back foot with the heel on that line. And I would have my front or left toe on that line in a mirrored foot position. So if I get in the middle of where the camera is, actually that would probably be better to do that. So you can see. Hotel shooting lessons. So this would be how I would stand. So Damon, you can see my belly button is right here. That would be pointing this way, but I'm taking the shot this way. So I would be holding the gun. Maybe a better way would be like those little funny videos on my gun. Okay, so my belly button and chest, everything is facing this way, but I'm going to be shooting here. And what you can see is if I continue to drop, if I didn't have 34-inch barrels, if I continue to drop my gun in that position, do you see how it's perfectly parallel with that belt? And so that's what we call a shoulder angle to gun angle. And basically that is about a 45-degree angle. Unfortunately, the angle that I have with the camera doesn't make it look like 45 degrees, but it really is. So that's the way that I like to position myself to be able to shoot the bird. Let me read some of these comments before I switch the camera back to make sure there's something else I can show you here. No, Damon, you're not getting me off track at all. So for a left-handed shooter, it would basically just be the reverse of it. You can think of it this way. Don't think of right foot and left foot. Think of it as the back foot or the back leg, your heel is on the line, and the front leg, your toe is on the line. So it's back heel to front toe to target with a mirrored stance. It's important to have that mirrored stance. Let me do one more thing. I'll show you. This is not going to be a perfectly straight line, but it's the best one I got. Okay, so you can see that like it would be a mirrored stance in terms of the mirror of it is directly in between each foot, and the feet are mirrored like this. And if I drew a straight line in between the two, they're equidistant from that line, and that's actually where you can see where the 45-degree angle is. So like this angle right here is 45 degrees. That's where that comes into play, and that's where that shoulder angle to gun angle becomes 45 degrees. So, okay, now I'm gonna change. I'm gonna give me like a minute to fix the camera back, and I'll be right back. I know, Trevor, I understand that. I was like, man, should I really do this in the middle of a hotel room? This might be pretty bad. I'm about to totally lose all the credibility of my scientific research on my podcast by doing YouTube live videos on my knees in a hotel room in Florida. Okay, I'll be right back, guys. Goodness gracious. Hey, Bella Bean. Okay, let's see. Okay, don't come crashing down, camera. Oh, Jesus. My poor camera, guys, has gone through it today. I'll tell you. I'll talk about embarrassing. I will admit this story that happened today because it's funny. I don't care about getting made fun of. Give me 1 second though. I gotta. Oh, that doesn't look right. What did I do? I already made a mess. With the camera angle, keep your minds. I got too many of you jokesters on here. Okay, let's see. Is that right? Okay, cool. All right, let me get my dog out of here and I'll be right back. Okay, come on, Belle. Come on. Okay, fine, whatever. My dog's making me look bad. Let me get the camera right. Okay. Okay, so Before I get serious again, do you guys want to hear what I did today that was really stupid? Damon says, that really changes a lot of stuff I've been taught. So much for that level 1 course. Yeah. I hate to say this, but there's nothing wrong with the NSCA level 1 instruction course. It's a great thing, and it brings a lot of people into the sport and helps people access information to help them get better. And the quicker that people experience success in this game, the more that they're apt to commit to it, and that's great. But we just have to, take into consideration the information that we're getting and where it's coming from, and then, but also apply it through the filter of what is it supposed to be for. I just had this conversation with a student on the phone, for 3 or 4 days ago, where, he was saying that he's mentally going through. I have this conversation all the time with people. I get it probably, I would say, a couple times a month. I get a call like this where the specific individual, whoever it is going through this mental problem where the people around them that they shoot with are telling them that what they're doing is wrong, and they're telling them to have an aggressive stance, or that they need more gun speed, or they're filtering all of their advice through how much lead they need and where they're missing in front or behind or whatever, and telling them that they may be holding the gun wrong or whatever it is, and that's causing a big problem for them because it's creating a lot of self-doubt in what they're doing and a lot of confusion. And so basically my advice to him was this, that first off, we have to understand that the people that offer that advice, even if it is unsolicited, are not doing it to hurt you. They're doing it to help you. And they're not purposefully and consciously choosing to give you wrong or bad information. And the reality of it is, it's not even bad information, because the stuff in the NSCA instructor course, or the advice that you get from people out on the course, even local coaches, it's information that has been memorized from publications of people that have written books in the history of the game, going back a long time, or it's their interpretation of a lesson that they got from somebody, and it's regurgitated after it's been memorized. And so the purpose of it is to be good information, and it is good information based off of their sources. But it's kind of like, if you have to take the approach of this. There are basically 5 to 20 people in the world who are able to compete at a level to which they truly can actually win a world championship. And every year, those people are getting better. So then again, every year, it forces all of the other people in that category to try to get better. And the only way that we get better is to invest more into research, or to experimentation, or to testing theories and applications of things, or looking in other categories of information to see what can be applied to shooting, like neurology or philosophy, or like exercise science and stuff. And we are forced to do that, because if we don't, then we get left behind. And so there's really 5 to 20 people in the world who actually truly care about that's a terrible way to say that. I did not mean it that way. There are many people that care about advancing their knowledge in shooting, but there are only 5 to 20 people somewhere around that number, that are required to look for things that have not been talked about yet in shooting, so that we can get a leg up on the other guys that we need to try to beat, because I pay my bills with the money that I win and the money that I make by teaching. And I don't make any money teaching if I don't win. So it's very, very important for my knowledge of the game and for my understanding of the game in every level and in crazy levels of depth to be at the forefront of information. And you can create an analogy to this very similar to just medical science, where, if you have to get a really complex surgery done, there's two approaches that you can take. You can go to the guy that's 75 years old and about to sell his practice, who's been doing it for so long that he is so incredibly skilled, and has a good reputation. But let's say maybe in the past 3 to 5 years has not been really, really up to date on the new research and the new methods of either doing the surgery. Sorry, my dog is drinking water next to me. My mic might be picking it up. But basically may possibly not be fully up to date on all of the new stuff. And he may be using older methods of doing that specific surgery, or taking a different approach to the diagnosis of what you're doing, of what you have, because of his understanding of the knowledge and when he was really actively trying to learn the knowledge. That's not every doctor. There are obviously some. I have students who are at about that stage of their practice that love to learn, but there are some people like that. Or you can take the approach of somebody who is much younger, has come out of one of the leading research universities in that specific field, and may have even, an equivalent would be somebody whose thesis of their PhD was on this new breakthrough technology or surgery, and they invented the field of this new breakthrough leading thing. And you can choose which one to get the surgery done by, but they're going to be two different ways. And does that mean that either of those two people are wrong? No. Because that new guy has that new science and everything, and new leading research and information, that doesn't make the other guy wrong. It just makes him different. And so, that's kind of the way I look at those bigger overarching coaching programs, where they're just so big and cumbersome that you can't disseminate information as quickly as it's learned. And so the information that's taught is old, but it doesn't make it bad. It just makes it old and different. And so the best way that I told my student, I was like, just tell that person, like, look, I appreciate you giving me the advice. I know that it's not wrong. I know I've read about that kind of stuff in the books and everything, but I'm trying to learn some of the new stuff that there's very few people doing right now. In 20 years from now, the stuff that those 5 to 20 people are teaching that's new is going to be old, and there'll be new stuff. So, all of us may be sitting here realizing everything we've been teaching for the past 5 years was wrong. But that's the way that acquiring new knowledge works, and that should be the pursuit of it. But yeah, I would never bash the NSCA programs or the SCTP programs, because they're all volunteers trying to help the sport. But it's just a little bit older information. Sorry to go on a rant there, but that's actually kind of important to understand. Yeah, Bella's the star of the show. I'm for hire as a professional stream manager. This is amateur hour. Finally, the star of the show. Okay, so Damon says he probably would make more money with the shooting podcast, explaining all the different positions on an OnlyFans page. I literally was thinking, I was like, man, I feel like I'm getting into this territory of the OnlyFans content, doing this stuff in a hotel. That's hilarious, Damon. Oh my gosh. Brian says, Brian Davis, I have 3 different students named Brian. I have a feeling the way that you're wording this that you are the one in Houston. But anyways, good to hear from you. If you're not that Brian Davis, let me know, and I apologize. But just the way you're wording that makes it sound like it. So I'm going to read it. David, you had me do some balance and dry fire drills in a lesson. Very eye-opening and helpful. How often do you recommend incorporating this drill into regular practice sessions? Let me do balance and dry firing drills in a lesson. Very eye-opening and helpful. How often do you... So Brian, that's kind of a little bit about what we talked about earlier on in this episode. Doing like dry firing drills and forcing shooting to be a closed loop system. And honestly, you could take two approaches with this, and I honestly would incorporate both of them. I specifically dedicate 2 practices per year, like full days of practicing, where I don't even take ammo, and I probably pull the trigger and throw anywhere. I probably do it for anywhere from, I'd say 300 to 500 targets. So I let it take all day, and doing what you're talking about in your question. So I do that for 2 practices a year as its own individually assigned and consciously attentive thing. On top of that, you can pull that type of drill into any time you progress or move or decide to change targets and focus on a new thing. I would initially start with that. So you can make it its own practice, and you can kind of embed it for 1 to 3 to 5 shots before trying every new thing in every practice. So, if you're shooting 100 to 200 targets in a practice, let's say maybe you may be trying to do 3 to 5 different things, you're maybe taking, let's say 15 to 25 additional dry fire shots focusing on that, just to pull yourself back into that closed loop system to remove that external feedback of the broken bird and make you more hyper aware of your body. So I absolutely would do that all the time. I love to do that in lessons. And sometimes people think I'm crazy when I do it in a lesson, but the value of it is huge. Wow, comments went crazy. Let's see. Trevor says, yes, there's a proficiency requirement. It's pretty easy to accomplish, though. Brian says, noting these drills are not unique to sporting clays, but are equally helpful in other areas. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so same thing applies. Haas says, you may just have to if your hand starts acting up. I both know what you're referencing in terms of what actually happened, and I know where you're going with that, and that's freaking hilarious, Haas. Oh, man. But maybe I wouldn't be able to if that happens. Nate says, I'd take a lesson from you if you never won again. Yeah, but the question is, how much would you make me pay you to give you a lesson? Holy cow, Trevor. That's awesome. 74% NSCA average left-handed? Why the hell are you shooting left-handed? Just for the hell of it? Oh, my gosh. Todd says, when you go into a... left-handed still get me. When you go into a stand, do you consciously tell yourself if you are going to use a swing through or pull away method? I'm just reading again to make sure I comprehend it. No, I can honestly and truly say, and for those of you who have taken a lesson from me, you know that I'm not saying this for the sake of trying to create a viral statement or to over exaggerate something to make a point, because you know that in a lesson I have never once, in any of you that are listening right now that have taken a lesson with me, I probably have never once mentioned in any of our lessons the method that I'm trying to get you to use. The only time I've probably ever said swing through, pull away, sustain lead, or collapsing lead, or maintain lead is probably in making a comparison in how people try to think of it like that when really we should be thinking about something else. But basically, to answer your question, I really don't. Let me see which ones you referenced. You said swing through or pull away method. Yeah, I mean, I personally would say that if someone forced me to answer the question of which methods do you use, and I still wouldn't even answer it that way. But if someone said, if I were to look at shot cam videos of you shooting a tournament, David, what methods would it look like it is that you are using? My answer would be probably would look like either, I would say 85% of the videos would look like mostly a collapsing lead with a few frames of the video, maybe like, let's say 10% of the whole shot, 10% of my movement between my hold point and my break point being what would look like a maintain lead, and about 15% of the videos of the shot cam footage would look purely like pulling the trigger very close to the moment. It would look on the video all like a collapsing lead, but it's basically, my definition of it is I'm pulling the trigger at the moment that the connection is established. And that connection I filter through proprioceptive movement, not visually conscious placement of the gun. So I look for that sensory perception, movement, and proprioceptive feedback that allows me to feel my body moving at the same speed as I perceive the bird to feel like it's moving. And that's how I try to connect. That would be a way for me to say, instead of me saying I shoot maintain lead, to me that means that I determine a gap, I put the gun there, and I keep it there based off of seeing it not changing. And that would mean that it doesn't matter how my body moves, as long as that relationship stays what I want it to stay, then that's considered to be a good shot. And I don't like that approach because it's not mechanically, physically perfect, and it allows too many variables to happen where things can go wrong and you can miss. So instead, what would accomplish the same thing is I try to focus on a physical movement that attaches and connects through harmony and synchronization and cadence, rotational speed that equals a ratio of speed and movement of the bird, and hand speed in my mount that equals the same thing. And I separate that down between rotational speed is horizontal speed of the bird, and my hand speed is the vertical speed of the bird. And when I put those two together at the same time, that equals the target line. So an example would be if I was shooting a bird purely crossing and it had an inclining angle of 45 degrees. So 0 degrees is perfectly flat, 90 degrees is perfectly straight up, 45 is directly in the middle. If it had a 45 degree incline and I was shooting it anywhere before or at the apex, then my hand speed would equal my target speed. My hand speed would equal my rotational speed. But my hand speed would be half of the total speed of the bird, because if I add my hand speed to my rotational speed, I get that 45 degree line. So that means that if I clocked the speed of the bird with a radar gun, it was going 50 miles per hour. But then the whole bird is actually going 50 miles per hour. But if I were to, this is not perfect analogy, but it will help you make sense of what I'm saying. If I'm looking at it pure crossing and I radar gun it 50 miles per hour, if I move over to where it's coming directly straight at me, and I radar gunned it, if a radar gun would work this way, and all I was doing was measuring how fast it was going up, because where I'm standing doesn't allow me to see the horizontal movement, it would be going 25 miles per hour up. And then if I were to get a drone to film it from the top down, and I couldn't see how much it was going up, I would only see how much it would be going in across the ground. It would be going 25 miles per hour because of that 45-degree angle. So 45-degree angle is a 1-to-1 ratio. My hands and body are the same. If I do a 30-degree incline of a bird, now my hands are half of the speed of my body, but altogether, my hands are a third of the speed of the bird, and my body rotation is 2/3 the speed of the bird. So if the bird was going 90 miles per hour, that would be very hard, but my hands would be doing an equivalent ratio, and because the bird is 40 yards away, let's say, and I'm making a movement way back here, so it's not going to be like my hands are going 30 miles per hour, but they're going to be doing an equivalent ratio of that based off of my distance away from the target. But my hands would essentially be matching a 30 mile per hour bird, and my body would be matching a 60 mile per hour bird. And then if I had a 60-degree incline bird, it would be the reverse of that. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm making a video right now, an actual shooting video that's gonna both take videos of targets and have like on-screen graphics and stuff to explain this so you can see and conceptualize it better. So I bring all 12 Pila lenses I have, but I only wear one. Oh, I missed a lot of questions. Oh, cool. So it is. Well, it's good to hear from you, Brian. And no problem. I hope that whatever injury you have, I hope it's getting better. I hope you've been shooting good. And say hello to your wife for me. Let's see. David is 100% lead reduction. Holy mackerel. Okay, I'm gonna fly through these in my head and read these. How many different lenses do you take to a tournament? I shot a tournament Saturday and struggled to see clays with an all brown background. Okay, but you'd have to buy drinks, Nate. I've got a broken. Oh dang! I didn't know that. Holy cow, Trevor. Sorry to hear about your hand. What the hell happened on that? I better quit saying that. Apparently you get flagged if you swear on YouTube, so I better quit. Dang. 37 out of 50 with a broken front hand is pretty dang good. Noah May. I'm a fairly new shooter. What is a good way to start to understand why I'm missing? If I know how I miss, I can further adjust for the next pair, but sometimes I don't have a good idea of what's wrong. If anybody wants to buy Pila lenses, my eyes just crossed. Okay, let me go back. I just got through all your questions. I'm going to go back to the ones, or comments, I should say. I'm going to go back to the ones that I need to answer. Okay, Jason, how many different lenses do you take to a tournament? I'm the worst person to ask about what lenses to use because I'm colorblind. I actually worked with Pila personally to make a lens set for colorblind people, and it works really, really well. So because of that, for my personal eyes, I only take 3 lenses with me when I'm shooting, but that's just because my eyes are so weird. But I use the RGLL, this is all Pila, RGLL, I should say, yeah, then the RGHL, and then I don't remember the name of this other one because it's a weird lens where the identification of it is worn off. but it's a blue lens, and it's made for archery shooting. But the way that it works for my eyes is on the birds that are basically there's specific birds and specific lighting with my color blindness that are 100% invisible to me. I mean, I'm not kidding you, 100%, where I've been in multiple times. I've been in a shoot-off for a national title at the national champ, not HOA of the national sporting clays main event, but like, you know, FETASC HOA or prelim HOA and 5-stand HOA, and the regional championship this past year at Providence Hill. I got into a shoot off with Joe Finizzi, and we shot the same pair 5 times, and the first bird was completely invisible to me until it got out to like 85 yards. And so I can't even see it at all. Echolocation would be better for me to use if possible. And that blue lens for archery makes those targets look black to me when they're orange. Unfortunately, with my stupidity, I did not have those lenses with me for that shoot-off because I forgot that at home. There you go with the preparation thing. And then the tournament, the national titles I've lost at nationals have all been before that lens, before I knew about it. But I will tell you, I always hate to say this because I feel bad saying it, but I have to process my answers through what I hold to be the most important thing. And at the core of who I am and what I value the most is being educational to people and giving them good advice through my experience and knowledge and in the science that I have researched to educate myself on. And so the advice I'm about to give you is counterproductive to my friendships and relationships with people that are dealers that sell glasses. And I don't have a contract with Pila on purpose because I don't want to, not because their product is not good, but because I value being able to say that these are the best lenses that you can buy, and I'm not paid to tell you that. And that's literally, I will find a screenshot of my response to Phil Pila when he asked about a contract where I told him that to prove that I'm not lying about it. But so I feel bad saying this, but basically there has been research done on the neurological science between the eyes and the brain and how it recognizes things in terms of contrast and coloration and things in terms of conscious recognition of something in your vision. And I may be getting this wrong. I'm going to summarize it. I might paraphrase it wrong, but basically, the less lenses that you have in different color sets, the better. So that's why it's good. You know, like if you find a color range that you like a specific coloration filter that you like, get all the ones that they offer in terms of the light admittance for that lens. But try to stick within like 1 to 3 different colorations, variations of filters, because that helps. Like if you're continuously changing all the time, you actually, I forget how the study worked, but basically it said something about your conscious recognition of it. So actually Dr. Colo is a great person to reference on that to get more information. I believe he may have talked about that in a podcast on Shotgun Sports, and it may have been one that I interviewed him on. But yeah, so there's my answer to you. I take 2 different colorations. I take that colorblind coloration with 2 different, the LL and the HL stands for low light and high light. So 2 different like light admittances in the same color filter, and then 1 other color filter. So I have 2 color filters for the way I shoot. Let's see. Noah says, I'm a fairly new shooter. What is a good way to start to understand why I'm missing? If I know how I miss, I can further adjust for the next pair, but sometimes I don't have a good idea of what's wrong. So Noah, answer a few of these questions for me. Where do you live? How long have you been shooting? What's a club that you shoot at a lot? What is your tournament experience, if any? And have you had any instruction, and if so, by who? And then I will be able to answer your question much better. Okay, so P. Davis says, I read Nate's comment again. It made me laugh. My eyes just crossed and my brain fried. I feel like that's when I was talking about the degrees of birds. Okay, so P. Davis says, can you explain how you personally shoot a dropping target, specifically how your hands are moving? Great question. Very simple answer. On a dropping bird, my hands don't move at all. So if I'm shooting a bird dropping, there's only one. It's going to be happening through one of two different pathways to getting to that point in the line of a bird. Either it's a bird that I am shooting. Let's say it's a single target, or the first bird of a pair. And so my movement with the bird is going to go from starting before the apex and then existing all the way after the apex until my break point as it's dropping, and that can happen as a second bird of a pair if I connect to it before the apex. Or the other scenario would be if I can't get to the target, or it's specifically presented and set to where the only place that you have the ability to shoot it is dropping. If it is the first example where I can connect to the shot to the bird through the apex, I will tell you this. The way that I shoot, one of the variables that I define which is hold point, I define that as an objective thing, which means that hold point is not a variable thing for a target. That doesn't mean that on different targets I have the same hold point. What it means is that the moment at which I am deciding to shoot a specific bird, whatever I determine the hold point to be, it does not matter where my break point will be. My hold point will be at that place. And then objectively defining a hold point means that for that target at that time of day with that lighting and my own personal physical, visual, and emotional state that I am in, accounting for all those variables, there is one place where I can start my gun and have perfect synchronization as early and as long and as good as possible. That's an objective hold point for me. So I work to find that place. So that's always going to be somewhere early on in the line. I'm never going to have an objective hold point after the apex on a bird that I can connect to before. Which also means that if you can put together the pieces here, if I'm going to shoot a bird dropping, I'm not going to just wait for it to hit the apex, connect to it there, and then bow. The reason why I don't like that is because it doesn't give me proprioceptive feedback on the bird from the beginning of the shot. It makes me consciously intercept with an insertion on the target midway through the line, and then I have to switch over to doing proprioceptive movement as it falls, and the compression of time that's available for me to do that is too small. So even though it's somewhat, you could argue that through the filter of the way that other professionals shoot the game, having a hold point that would be the same as shooting the bird, halfway up the line, using that same hold point for a bird that I'm going to take a foot off the ground on a big chandelle is needless, useless, and counterproductive. For me, that's not the case, because my movement connecting to that bird from the moment that it starts to fly, in synchronizing my rotational speed and my hand speed, gives me proprioceptive feedback that tells me I'm connected. I feel this connectedness. That's good. It allows me to dedicate my conscious attention to seeing the target because I'm getting proprioceptive, non-visually conscious feedback that I'm doing my mechanics correctly because I can feel the synchronization. At that point, I'm doing that throughout the whole first half of the flight path of the bird. When the bird hits the apex, at the moment that it hits the apex, I've finished my mount. Because if we understand that I'm trying to synchronize my movement to the bird, if the bird is not going up anymore, then I don't want my gun to be going up anymore. So that's when I complete and cap off my mount. So the bird hits the apex, I complete my mount. From that point forward, the only thing that I'm doing is bowing my posture and not using my hands because I'm trying to maintain that consistent proprioceptive relationship between the gun and the eyes without having it changing as the bird falls. So if this is the gun and here's my eyes, I don't want to do this, or I don't want to connect and pull away. I break that proprioceptive connection there. So I want to maintain that eyes-gun relationship that's parallel as I go down, and the only way for me to do that is to only use my body. So that's what I would do. Sorry that was a long explanation for what you might have thought was a simple question, but I have to give that back end for you to understand the purpose of it. I guess likewise, if I'm shooting a bird where I don't get a chance to go up with it, then it's still basically the second half of what I just explained. The second that I can connect to it as early as possible, I connect to it, but if it's not going up, neither are my hands. Yeah, Brian, the light was terrible at that. We're just in those shadows and those like dark targets, and they used I feel like they used those half and half color targets, or maybe they were, I don't remember, but all I know is that I basically couldn't see. I think it was I had to shoot 5 true pairs of this like quartering bird, starting at probably 50 yards, full spring, quartering out, starting under the trees, going out into the sky. True pair with a crow. I couldn't see that first bird at all. I made the decision. I was like, well, I can shoot the crow first, and then by the time I can shoot the crow, that's about the time I can see that first bird that I would like to shoot first. But the reality of me hitting a bird at 85 yards away, curling away, and still going out, that's a luck shot. So I just figured, I was like, well, if I can feel the speed, I'm going to try to execute a move without really being able to see the bird, and I'll just see if I get, I'd rather get lucky hitting a bird within range than try to risk hitting a bird out of range. So, whatever. I could have played it safe and gone to where I never, can get a second shot at that crow every time, but I like to go big or go home. It's my approach. I'd rather lose going big than lose playing it safe. Let's see. We got some Ken's color. I'm finding that with the thyroid problems, which impact my eyes and having green eyes, and they throw in getting older, I'm gravitating to lighter colored lenses. Yeah. Thyroid. Depending on if you're hypo or hyperthyroidism, or if you have something like what is that? It's like Hashimoto's something. There's a bunch of different thyroid issues that they can influence your eyes. And actually, one of the things I believe of either Hashimoto's or maybe it's hypothyroidism, but it actually influences the positioning of your eyes. If it gets bad, your eyes can move forward a little bit. That can create some type of horizontal or vertical misalignment in your eyes, which, if it gets bad, can basically simulate you having eye dominance problems, where at certain times you'll feel like the bird shifts or your eyes shift, because basically when you're trying to focus on a singular point out in space, i.e. the target, that only one or the other eye can actually intercept that point. And if one eye is on it, the other eye is off. So, the biggest thing with any type of thyroid issues, make sure that if you're prescribed medication that you do take it, but also try to keep up to date with some of your appointments with your eye doctors, and ask for like a full spectrum test to test vertical and horizontal misalignment, both subjective and objective misalignment. There's two different things, really four different things. Okay, so Noah says I've been shooting for around a year now as a sub. Oh, cool, sub junior, awesome, man. Super happy to have you on here. That's fantastic. I've shot at the state championship and many other basic registered shoots through the past year. I shoot at DeSoto Rifle and Pistol Club and have received instruction from a few people such as Hunter Todd and Dale Bouchelon. Oh, cool. Okay, very cool. Okay, let me go back up to read your initial question. What is a good way to start understanding why I'm missing? Okay. So, I got to think about if I want to answer this in the way that the best explanation of this answer is that, long story short, it's not really that important that you understand why you miss, because what that would mean, like if you're shooting, there are so many different reasons why you can miss. And if your goal is to determine why you just missed in practice, let's say, this is going to be a different answer for practice than a tournament. If your goal in practice is to determine after every miss why you missed, then the problem with that is that the thing that you're dedicating your conscious sensory perception and awareness to is going to be continuously changing from topic to topic to topic, or from it would be like you'd be paying attention. Well, did my hands move on that shot? I don't know. And you'd shoot another shot. Or maybe it was my rotation, or maybe it was my balance, or maybe it was where my eyes were looking, or maybe it was where, like just changing the topic of what you're thinking about, which is going to influence what you're paying attention to non-consciously, and then it's going to make you decide to consciously pay attention to that new thing for the next shot. That actually is counterproductive to getting better, because you're not staying consistently and singularly focused on one specific location of attention. I hope that makes sense. You're not picking one thing to pay attention to and assessing along the spectrum of bad to good how good it was. You're just being aware of one thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And while that would maybe be important in a tournament, in practice it's counterproductive, because you're not cataloging data that's comparable from shot to shot to shot, because you're comparing apples and oranges and pears and bananas, so to speak. So you can't compare each shot to understand the progression of what's changing and how it feels and how you're getting better or worse. So the best thing to do in practice is to predetermine what you want to focus on in practice, whether that be a specific movement with your body, or a specific part of your mount, or a specific variable external to you. So like working on your start time, what a lot of people call like moving on motion. Or maybe you're trying to work on committing to your break point. Or maybe you're trying to work on, your hand speed, or your focal points, or your transition from bird to bird in your body or your eyes. Whatever it is, pick that one thing and only focus on that, both in the shot and in your assessment/analysis after the shot. And basically the process you want to go through is, okay, I've determined to focus on this thing for my practice. How should it feel if I do it correctly in this shot I'm about to take? Think about it, how it should feel. Think about what part of your body needs to move and in what way. Pre-plan and program that. Get ready to call pull. As you call pull, look at the bird enough to be able to connect to it with the limited amount of visual information that you need. But most of your attention that you should be consciously aware of should be focusing on feeling that one specific thing happen that you're trying to get better. And during the shot, as you're progressing and connecting and whatever with the bird, that's what you should be consciously paying attention to. And then you take the shot, don't care if you hit or miss. After the shot happens, then without any desire or care about what the result was in terms of the target, I want you to assess, how did the thing I'm trying to work on feel compared to how it should have felt? Then make your assessment on that. And then on the next shot, try to get closer to doing the thing that you feel like it should theoretically feel like. And if you have a good coach, I forget the name of the first guy. Oh, Hunter Todd. I can't say good or bad about him. I may know him, and I apologize if I do. But I get ADHD, hyperfocus on these things. But Dale Bouchelon, I know really well. I've known him for a long time. He's a super nice guy, and I've never seen him coach, but I would imagine he's a good coach. And so if you've taken lessons from him, I would hope that he has gotten you to experience a perfect example of whatever he's trying to teach you at least one time, and it only takes one time. And if he did, I hope that you took the time to process what that felt like, process what that, I'm going to say looked like, but I don't mean that in terms of the lead. I mean that in terms of like how you perceived everything in your body, how you saw the target, like nice and calm and slow, or fast, fuzzy, and skipping through the sky, and everything. So I hope that you are able to process that, remember that, then pull that experience back up through just remembering that experience, and that would be your go-to example to try to search for on every shot. And you can make your whole practice on searching for that one thing. And if you were able to successfully feel that again one time in a whole practice, consider it a success. Because the next time that you go out, you'll be able to do it 2 times, and then the next time 4, and then 8, and then 16. And it's just going to continue down that process. So that's how you get better. And it doesn't matter why you missed. You don't need to figure out why. What you need to figure out is, what did I experience differently than what I tried to experience? And the continued pursuit of trying to do that is neurologically proven to increase the rate of your learning and mastery of that physical process of movement. In a tournament, to diagnose a miss, the only way to do it as good as possible is to have enough research before you make the plan, so you see the pair and experiment with all the different ways you know how to do it, how to approach that pair, experiment with the different breakpoints, and determine which one you like better, not by what other people are doing, but what gets you closer to the feeling of the thing that you know a perfect shot should feel like. That's your research phase. Once you find all the components that come together to make it feel as good as possible, that becomes your plan. The more detailed you can make your plan, which only happens with good research, the better. Because the more detailed your plan is, the more experiential data that you have to go back to analyze afterwards. After you have your plan that's as detailed as possible, then rehearse it as other people are shooting. Practice it with your hands and your body, and move the way that you would with a gun. Don't use your hands to move like this. Move your whole body. Change your posture, however you've been taught to shoot. Do all of that. And as many times as you need to create that proprioceptive feedback loop, so that you can look and pay attention to the bird and proprioceptively feel your body moving correctly. And that will give you enough confidence to be able to do that in the shot when it matters for a tournament, and not second guess that what you're doing is right or wrong, because you'll know it's right because you felt it being right. You put the research in to test every other option, and your plan has lots of detail. So let's say you go through that whole thing and you still miss. Well, because you were looking at the bird that whole time, that allowed you to have proprioceptive feedback of your body for the whole time. Because of the fact that you were not consciously moving your body in the shot, and you had that proprioceptive feedback, that will allow you to go back and understand how it felt in your body, because you weren't consciously looking and trying to drive it. You were proprioceptively feeling and allowing it to happen. And then all you have to do is, if you've made a good enough plan, then you say, okay, how did that feel based off of how it should have felt? And if you say, well, not good, then just ask yourself, what didn't feel good? Did it not look as detailed? Did it look faster? Did it look whatever? Did it look like it skipped through the sky instead of a smooth connection? Or did it feel like my hands moved way faster? Did I feel like I was more anxious? Did I feel like I had more tension? Did it feel like I lost my balance? None of those things align with what my plan was supposed to be. And whatever your answer is to that question, that's the thing that went wrong. And so then there's your answer. And that's as good of an answer as I can give you on that on a podcast without being with you to show you those things. So I hope that helps. And the only reason I went into that much detail is because that question is so good that hopefully has helped every person listening. Yeah, Trevor, post the video of that thing that we made at my place. Yeah, no problem, guys. Happy to help out with that. That was a good answer. I mean, it was a really good answer. It's the best answer anybody's ever said. No, that was a really good question, and it allowed me to go into detail on some stuff. And Noah, if you haven't, and for anybody listening here, if any of you guys have not yet listened to the podcast that I released previously on this past Monday, the previous Monday, I'm going to link it here because I go into detail, really good detail on explaining all of that stuff. And it's really valuable. It's long. It's 3 hours, but that's typical for me. That's a short walk in the park for me. As much as I can talk. I literally make a living on talking to a camera with nobody answering me. But the... okay, let's see. This is the one I want to share. How do I do this? Anyways, it's long, but all the timestamps of all the individual components of the podcast and all the different topics that I cover are right there. And so you can just look at the thing that you need to listen to or you want to learn about. You can skip around and just move the scroller over to that time. Or if you're on YouTube, you can click it and it goes straight there. And you can navigate back and forth between the podcast. I'm going to share this for you guys. I would like to make it where I don't just have, let's try this, see what happens. Okay. I believe that link should work for that episode. You can also find that on any of the podcast apps that are on my website. It's basically right now I just have Spotify and Apple Podcasts and on YouTube. And I'll also, if you like it on YouTube, I'll put that up here. I'll find that video and link it. Good night, Lily. Yes. No. This episode will stay live on the channel. You may have to wait a day or two, maybe. I've noticed with YouTube when I record in hotels, on the podcast, on the live episodes, because it's a hotel internet connection. I don't really understand how I would imagine this is all streaming to YouTube, but I don't really know what happens. I know when I stream one to YouTube at my house with fiber internet, literally when I click end the live stream, you can immediately find the episode processed and ready to be viewed again on YouTube. But the two that I've done in a hotel room, I couldn't even find them for a day and a half. So if you don't see this immediately, just keep coming back and it will pop up, because basically YouTube has to convert it from the compressed version that was streamed live into the, more heavily encoded version with better quality, and then it publishes it. So, but it will be here and it will always be here. Cool. Yeah, of course. Good night. Let's see. Okay. Good night, Brian. We'll see you later, and take care. And man, last time I was at the West Side, that place is so beautiful. I'm itching to get back again. I love teaching there. It's such a beautiful place. And Lori and Dan are awesome people. I'll tell you, I'm not even promoting lessons right now, but for any of you who are listening to this or listen to it in the future, if you're ever in the Houston area, or even if you're just looking for a fun shooting vacation, there are so many fun places to go shoot, but with amazing people that run the clubs or own the clubs, and great targets and great training and amazing facilities. And so not taking anything away from anybody else, but West Side Sporting Grounds in Houston is a special place. It like when you go shoot there, I mean, taking the people out of the equation, the people are amazing there. Everyone from the girls in the office to Lori and Dan, to the guys that work on the property. And again, if you're listening to this and you work at another club, I'm not saying that you're not great, because everyone is. But this place, like if you enjoy nature, the trees on this property literally make you feel like you're in like I don't even know how to explain it. It's like a fantasy world. It's freaking beautiful, amazing trees, great targets, cool. Like, I mean, it's just cool. I put some pictures up. I took my camera and I did some photography while I was there, and so you can see what I'm talking about. It's unbelievable. Actually, I may, just because I'm on this random rant and questions are dying down, and I'm probably going to end this pretty soon, I'm going to pull this one picture up that I took, just a couple of them. I'll just share this. No, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. Let's see. The local police. Brian, that was hilarious. I give Joe crap for that every time I see him, and I'm a little worried because he just got the new TRX Ram 1500 truck with the Hellcat engine in it, and that happened to him because he was driving my car, and I was explaining to him the difference in like accelerated torque in an electric vehicle, and told him to test them out. So he blames me for that. But and I got a text of this new truck, and he told me that, next time I'm with him, he's gonna take me for a ride, and I gotta drive it. I have a feeling he's got some tricks pulled up his sleeve. He's gonna get me back. Oh man. Yeah, that was fun. That was hilarious. He still remembers it. Obviously remembers it, but he still talks about you. Hilarious. Okay, cool. So here's what I'm gonna do, guys. Because I don't even know how long we're just at the 3 hour mark right now, and I don't want to go too long. I already went way too long, 3 hours. But I don't want to keep going too much and then basically just die down. But we'll end it basically pretty soon. But before I do, let me just ask for any question, any more things that you need to ask, or if I missed your question, I apologize. And as you're typing that up, I will tell you that this was basically I switched. I can talk English. I switched my schedule where normally Mondays are, if it's a YouTube video and not a recorded episode, the Monday live YouTube videos are generally the formal and educational ones, and the Wednesdays are generally like informal hangouts. I kind of decided to make this episode not be a presentation of the put together formal new information that I was going to attach onto my previous episode that I released last Monday, because I wanted to give you guys some more time. And you can see in the poll here, still 65% of you haven't gotten a chance to try to do your practice that we assigned kind of as homework from the last episode. So I want to give you guys a little bit more opportunity to do that. I will gauge it by ear. I'm still going to be doing an episode on Wednesday live on YouTube again. But basically, based off of how many of you are able to do the homework and try to, you've come up with a plan. If you don't know, the homework from last week, suggested homework was use the information I talked about in that recorded episode. Use your own creativity and abstract thinking and self-analysis using a shoot analysis sheet to pick a topic to focus on in practice, and put together your own practice plan. Then go and do the practice plan, follow your practice plan, and then we'll come back and kind of talk about what we learned, and then I'll help you guys build really good practice plans afterwards. So I want to give you guys a little bit more time to do that. If I still feel like there's not enough people that have, there's a lot of people that have submitted it, but I want to kind of preference. There's the analytics on the podcast are 20, 30,000 downloads, and so for the episode, so all over the world. So the problem with that is that number one, I got to find more times to do live videos to incorporate people in Australia, which I'm going to bring a guy up from Australia on the episode off his practice routine, because it was fantastic. But I'm getting a lot of submissions from people that are unable to be on the YouTube lives because of either job commitments or time zone differences or whatever. So because the YouTube lives are built to be interactive, I want to wait, and even though that the majority, or at least 50% of the people have submitted and gone through the homework, I want to get to where a majority of the people who are consistently on the YouTube lives have submitted everything, so that way we can work together on the YouTube live to go through our data that we've experienced and done in practice. So I'll make a judgment call on that later on. So basically what I'm saying, this coming Wednesday is either going to be refining that or introducing the new stuff and refining it. But we will be having an episode on Wednesday. If I feel like I need a little bit more time, we'll make Mondays. I'll change Mondays, supposed to be like this following Monday's planned recorded episode, into another YouTube live. And then we'll do that then. That way we have 2 weekends. Yeah, my dog. Every time I laugh, she wags her tail. And what's up, Amanda? Okay, let's see. Cool. All right, awesome, guys. Well, Bella. Let's see if she's being a little goof over here. I don't know. Bella, yeah. Okay, so, cool. It doesn't look like any questions. Thank you guys all so much. Super fun to have you guys on here. Man, every time I do this, you guys ask better questions, and it gets me talking forever, which I enjoy. So I love it. Cool. If you guys need any help through email of your stuff, feel free to send me an email. I'm just now at the point of my schedule where I'm now able, like the last couple days have been really heavily teaching and filming and traveling. So I'm behind on emails and phone calls. But I think I have the next 2 days I'm really heavily scheduled in some filming stuff, so I have more free time, downtime to respond to some stuff. And then I have a really long amount of time, I want to say like 2 weeks, scheduled at home to be doing some work and practice and podcast stuff. So I'll get caught up on all of you guys doing with your questions and stuff you're emailing. But thanks again. Appreciate it all. I can tell Bella knows that I'm wrapping up because now she's sitting at my feet. And oh, here we go. Yes, we're almost done. I know. Okay. Well, Bella says goodbye, and I'm saying goodbye and good night. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Thank you for your participation. This is a unique podcast where I can't do it without you guys. Requires your commitment, and it's equally as much as mine. So that does not go unnoticed or unappreciated. I appreciate it an incredible amount. Thank you guys. Best of luck in any tournaments you have coming up. Best of luck in your practice. And we will, for those of you that want to be, I will see you in 2 nights on YouTube again on Wednesday. Adios. I got to remember how to end this. Here we go. I got it. All right. See you guys.